G'day, legends. Welcome back to the Rugby League Guru podcast. Going to do something a little bit different today. It's a term that I use occasionally, especially when you see big injuries in the NRL. Every single team has got one of these players, and I call them Jenga players. Like the age-old game Jenga, when you take one out, all of a sudden it can fall into a heap. And sometimes you think the Jenga player is a certain guy, you take him out, and the team actually does okay without them, and you're a little bit surprised who it turns out to be. Sometimes it can be multiple guys that have to fall, but normally in every squad there is one dude that when you take him out, they are just a different side. And we're going to go through them today, brought to you by Neds, our official partners for season 2024. Make sure you download the Neds app, head over there and you can follow my profile on there, Rugby League Guru. We've also got a group there. You can follow all of my bets every single week. You can adjust them how you would see fit. Not quite sure if you are keen to follow me right now because I'm having an absolute shocker to start the season, but we are going to turn our form around. I've had a bit of a Wayne Bennett 2 weeks where I'm going to turn it all around and we're going to start to see some green now. So go over to the Neds app. Make sure you go and follow Rugby League Guru there. Join our group. A few conversations, a bit of banter, whatnot in there. Absolute top shelf. Join About Even whilst you're there. I'm obviously on that show with Neds as well. I would love to win a bet soon on there. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be groundbreaking when I do. Bringing in my partner in crime, my 5'8", my other working half, Cat Man Do the Meerkat. Welcome on.
I love how you get more creative every week with these nicknames.
I'm starting to scrape the barrel. I'm not going to lie. I need to do some more research.
Okay. I've got more for you. So whenever you're ready, you let me know what you want. And we could also do some bets on how likely it is that you're going to call me Catmandu when you're running out of names, because that one comes up an awful lot.
Yeah, there could be a bit of match fixing involved in that from me. So we'll look into it. Gamble responsibly, obviously.
Of course.
Now, Kat, what are your thoughts on the Jenga player? Do you like the idea?
I love this concept. I think it's a really cool way of looking, first of all, using the Jenga analogy, because who doesn't love a game of Jenga?
It's unreal.
Yeah, I do love a bit of that. The Haddad family loves a bit of Jenga, my mum. Although, can I just say, do you use the rule that if you touch the piece, you have to remove it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
My mum doesn't play with that rule. And let me tell you, things get pretty fired up at our house.
I was about to say, it's. I'm sure the game Jenga has made a lot of Saturday nights, but I'm sure it's led to a lot of divorces and family issues as well, because it is controversial, especially if you're getting your paws all over pieces and then backing out. You can't be doing that.
No, I know. And, we do have a go at her, but like you got to, respect the mother of the family. But God, it really does do my head in, I won't lie.
Yeah, if you touch a piece, you've committed to that piece. That piece is now your responsibility.
Exactly.
I hate that. But the Jenga idea, I absolutely love it. It's really interesting to see, guys. And there's a few guys we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through 8 teams today. The teams we're going through today: the Melbourne Storm, the Newcastle Knights, the South Sydney Rabbitohs, the Cronulla Sharks, North Queensland Cowboys, New Zealand Warriors, St. George Illawarra Dragons, and the mighty West Tigers. We're going to go through those sides today. And there's a few guys here in this group, Kat, that in the preseason I probably wouldn't have said they were the Jenga player, but the first 2 weeks has made me think a little bit differently about this. So we'll talk about that. I've told Kat, if you disagree with any of my picks, jump over the table, punch me in the mouth and tell me who is her Jenga player from that team. So I'm looking forward to getting a bit of pushback on these episodes, Kat. You've eyeballed them quickly.
Yeah, I have.
Anything standing out to you?
There's one or two where I'm really interested in hearing your justification, because I might have a counter argument. But in general, just looking forward to jumping over and punching you in the face.
I'm sure most are. I'm sure people would play big bicky to have that opportunity. Timmy Williams hasn't taken it yet, which shocks me week to week, but I'm sure he will. But let's get on to the first one, Kat, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, which I know you love being put on the spot.
So much.
We're here in the CBA Centre of Excellence. My question to you is, who's the Jenga player at Guru? Is it you or is it me?
Oh,
because this is tighter than what people would think. I don't think people realise how much of an impact Kat has had around the studio early.
First of all, thank you. I do appreciate that. It was very nice of you. I think you are still the backbone of this place, but I think with every day that I come in and the more hours I clock up here, the more I cement myself as, the spine of this place. Would you agree?
Oh, I do. It was actually a trick question because with only two pieces, it can't collapse. So I was going to say we're equal. We're equal parts here. That was going to be my compliment to you.
Cool.
But yeah, interesting how you took that.
I think we define teamwork. I think if you look up the definition of teamwork, you see Guru and Kathmandu.
Arm in arms.
Yes.
Like white and rice.
Yes.
Love that. All right, let's get stuck into our NRL teams brought to you by Neds. We're going to kick off with our very first team. And this one, Kat, I thought was really interesting. The Melbourne Storm. Now, if you would have asked me this question 4 weeks ago, I would have said the name Cameron Munster. He is the guy that they need to compete. I've seen them in the first 2 weeks. I've seen them, win in round one. I've seen them knock over the Penrith Panthers, both times without Cam Munster. So at the moment, I'm actually leaning towards the great Harry Grant. They're 9. Now, this weekend, they run out without Jerome Hughes as well. So depending on how they go against the Newcastle Knights on Sunday night, we might even get more indication. But I look at their squad and I go, you know what? When Cam Munster's not there, Jerome Hughes just steps up and takes a bit more responsibility in their attack and whatnot. When Harry Grant's not there, the next best hooker at the Melbourne Storm is very, very tough to find, and they lose a lot of direction ever since losing Brandon Smith. So for me, I think I have to go with Harry Grant. I can understand if people would want to nominate Cam Munster, but I think over the last few weeks and even just the last year or so, I think it probably has to be Harry Grant. Obviously, Craig Bellamy made him club captain during the offseason, which is an unreal selection in my opinion. I'm going Harry Grant. What are your thoughts, Kathmandu?
No, I rate this one, and I think in my experience, even playing Supercoach, NRL Fantasy, all those games, Harry Grant's like the non-negotiable in a lot of those. And I think that reflects a lot in not only his performance as an individual, but how crucial he is to pretty much every play at the Storm. However, I would say that over the weekend, it was Xavier Coates.
He was Xavier Coates.
He was the Jenga piece over the weekend.
Yeah, and there was one point where he was actually horizontal, 8 foot in the air, looking like a Jenga piece as well. So shout out to Xavier Coates, right up there. I think the other guy that we probably need to mention, Kat, is Ryan Pappenhausen, obviously.
Of course.
He'd be right up there with him. But for me right now, I think I'd go Harry Grant from the Melbourne Storm.
I think also too much time away from the team. They can perform without Pappy, and as good as he is, to your point, the way that you define the Jenga piece, I think there's proof in the pudding that they are okay without Pappy.
I think without Pappy as well, they chucked Nick Meaney back there, and we know that he can play there at a very high click. We also know that Cam Munster and Jerome Hughes used to be fullbacks too. So I think the thing that elevates Harry Grant is that the next best hooker is probably Tyrant Wishart, who isn't a hooker. So I think you would lose a lot there without Harry Grant. So he's our Jenga player from the Melbourne Storm. Let's have a look at the Newcastle Knights, the Novocastrians. And realistically, Kat, is this probably one of the easier ones?
Definitely.
I think it's very, very hard to go past Kalen Ponga. You have a look at the rest of their spine. They run with 2 hookers. They've just swapped their halfback this week. Tyson Gamble's a bit of a role player. I think every single thing that the Newcastle Knights do is done via Kalen Ponga. All of their attacking sets are done via KP. They've looked average the first 2 weeks, and I think the reality of that is because Kalen Ponga's looked a little bit lost. And it was, he obviously won the Dally M medal last year as soon as he was playing his preferred position and he was conscious. There was just no stopping him, and everything Newcastle did came through KP. Honestly, it's hard to work out who would be number 2 in the Newcastle Knights.
No, I mean, obviously last year Dom Young was their top try scorer, but you can survive without Dom Young too. Although, to his credit, we're not exactly seeing the same performance without him this season. But I do think you look at the Dally M, who was getting the points every week from that side? It's Kalen Ponga. He's kind of very safe to say that he does play that role in that side, and when he's not performing, neither are they.
Yeah, I think Kalen Ponga is without a doubt the Jenga player there. Interesting to see how he goes with Jack Cogger this week. I think he's going to get plenty of opportunities, and I'm expecting a bounce back from a champion like KP. Let's move to the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And Kat, before I say mine, because this is a really interesting one, I think people could go in a range of different directions here that could all make sense. I'm actually going to hand this one to you to get your take on it first. Who you got?
Okay. Now, obviously, I know who you've put, and it's very hard to disagree. I feel like that is one player that wherever you sit on the South Sydney side of things, you can agree that they are crucial. However, I will say that our Jenga, just to disagree with you, is Latrell Mitchell. Because
do you disagree with me though?
No, I don't disagree with you. But I kind of want to just throw another option in there because I feel like similar to Kalen Ponga, when Latrell Mitchell is not performing, when he is not at his best, it shows, it ripples into the results of our side. I think the time he's spent out injured reflected in our results. To be honest, when he's not in a great mood, when things aren't flowing, it reflects in our performance. I think a lot of people, he's obviously very tied to our team, and the conversation is always South Sydney and Latrell Mitchell, and that's almost to his own, I don't know. It's unfortunate at times because I do feel like there's a lot of negative headlines that can happen there. But anyway, I'm trailing off. What I'm trying to say is I think Latrell Mitchell's performance is really crucial to South Sydney's overall performance.
Yeah, and I think that most people out there would say Latrell Mitchell is the Jenga player. I think the vast majority of people would say that. The player that Kat's alluding to that I've selected is actually Cameron Murray. And I look at the South Sydney pack and it's good on paper, but I think it was NRL 360 I heard say it this week, and they made a really good point. They sort of said, when was the last time the South Sydney forward pack really beat up another forward pack? And it just hasn't happened in a long time. You win a lot of games off the back of flair and whatnot. Well, to be fair, you haven't won a lot of games recently, the back end of last season and start of this year, which has been disappointing. But I think that without Cam Murray playing, and I hate when they play him on the edges, but I always say it has to be in 13. Yeah. I think he's the most complete forward in rugby league as far as everything he does. And I think without him, mate, I reckon your forward pack, you could already argue it's underwhelming.
Yeah.
I think without Cam Murray in that side, it would be a lot worse than what people are anticipating.
Incredibly uninspiring if we didn't have Cam Murray. The amount of times you can go and look at our games and you can see that if Cam Murray was not the workhorse of that side, we would not have achieved the things that we achieved.
Yeah. No, completely agree. Yeah, so Cam Murray, he'd be my Jenga player. Latrell very closely behind him. Cody Walker's obviously worth a shout as well. The other guy I think is worth a shout is Jai Arrow as well. I think he's low-key, very important, along with Damien Cook as well. You've got a couple of stars on that side, but for me, Cam Murray's the guy.
I think Cookie, Trell, Jai Arrow, obviously we're going to see the impact of not having him there. Campbell Graham as well. Like these guys are really crucial to our performance, but I think to your point, Cam Murray, the role that he plays on that side is absolutely crucial, and often it's he who we have to thank for doing okay.
It's not very often you get a once in a generation forward like Cam Murray who he literally ticks every single box you could possibly ask for, even off field, good looking rooster. He's never in trouble. He just makes smart decisions. It's I cannot remember the last time I was watching a game of football thinking, what just happened in Cam Murray's mind? He's level-headed. He's exactly what you want. He's mascot junior. He just ticks every box for South Sydney. So he's my guy from South Sydney. For the Cronulla Sharks, Kat, I guess you could say a little bit similar to the Newcastle Knights. I think there is one very obvious standout, and is, of course, Nicho Hynes, Dally medal winner. Wilds, I think as well that, he's only in his third season at the club. He's only in his third season as an NRL halfback, and he's just so important to this side. But I do think his role's starting to change a little bit with Braden Trindle. So it will be interesting in a year's time to sort of see where this is at. I still think it will be Nicho. But there are other guys in this side that I think are very, very important. I think one that's really underrated who we haven't seen the Sharkies in a long time without Blake Brayley.
Yeah,
and I wonder what they would look like without him. They've got a guy in their squad named Jaden Berylcat who came from Queensland Cup a couple of years ago, and I think he got Player of the Year up there 2 years ago. Signed with Cronulla, and I spoke about him a lot in that preseason, saying, when he gets an opportunity, this will be really interesting how Blake Brayley responds. Blake Brayley has not missed a single game of football since then. He's been playing for the Newtown Jets for 2 seasons now. He just hasn't got an opportunity simply because Blake Brayley is always there and he does a job every week, and he's one of the last dinosaurs. He's one of the few that are playing 80 minutes still. Wow. So I think Blake Brayley has to be right up there in the conversation. I think Blake Brayley is a lot higher than what most people would put him, but it will be interesting to see next year, Kat. Adam Fanua-Blake arrives there.
Yeah, that is exciting.
I still think it'll be Nicho. I think it'll always be Nicho, but geez, AFB, he could be just what that forward pack is missing to take them into that elite class. So it'll be interesting to see where they sit with AFB. Is Nicho just your obvious?
Yeah, I think he's the headliner, it's fair to say, similar to the Kellen Ponga situation. But there are some players in there who are absolute workhorses who I think, we've talked about even like Cam McGuinness and how he just goes under the radar.
Very good
works
shout.
incredibly hard.
Yeah.
I rate him very highly, but no one really talks about him because similar to Blake Brayley, he just does his job week in, week out. He doesn't cause drama. He's not a social media guy. So you don't have that added profile, that talkability.
Yeah.
But for me, he's another contender for being an absolute workhorse, and he is a Jenga piece for me. You take him out, they don't have the same kind of power.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think Nico, I know he plays a different position, but as far as what he does on and off the field, good-looking guy, always makes good decisions. He's actually in the very similar mould to Cam Murray, I think. Fan favourite. Everyone loves him. I know he's not a Cronulla boy through and through, but my God, when I think Cronulla, I just think Nico. He looks like he's been there all his life.
I agree. The last time I went to, I've been to Cronulla a couple of times recently. I saw him one time. He was skateboarding along Cronulla Beach, and I thought, Cronulla boy, through and through.
Perfect alignment. It's unreal. So Nico Hines from the Cronulla Sharks. North Queensland Cowboys. Really interesting. You've got a guy there on a 10-year deal who's a premiership winner in Jason Taumalolo, who, I thought a few years ago he would be the guy forever. I think it has changed a little bit. You've obviously got new captains in Tommy Dearden and Ruben Cotter. And you know what? They've looked really good in the first 2 weeks. And the guy I'm going to name, Scotty Drinkwater, hasn't actually done a heap. He's just played his role in this team. But I do think Scotty Drinkwater is the guy. But I'll tell you what, Dearden and Cotter, they can't be too far away, in particular Tommy Dearden. Queensland 5'8", tough as nails. Ruben Cotter, tough as nails as well. But weirdly enough, I think it has to be the New South Welshman, Scotty Drinkwater. Are you in the same boat, Kat?
Yeah, but I'm curious where you sit on Val Holmes
in
terms of a Jenga piece for Queensland, for North Queensland, because I can't picture a Cowboys side without Val Holmes.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Like when he arrived up there, or when he came back from the NFL, I just sort of thought, you know what, he has to be the fullback, and there's no questions about that. He moved to centre, and he's just been dynamic there ever since. And you know what, maybe I sleep on him as a Jenga player because he's a centre. I find it hard to pick probably centres or back rowers for this position. But he has to be put right up there, doesn't he? He's been a champion of our game for a very long time, Val. He does so much work out of his own end. He's their goal kicker. He's their X factor. I'd have him in my top 3 or 4, but I just don't think I can go past. For me, if I'm looking at the North Queensland Cowboys winning a premiership this year, Scott Drinkwater has to have a 10 out of 10 season.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Whereas, Val Holmes, his position maybe not as crucial in that sense, but he's got to be converting the tries. He's got to be doing those things too, because those are missed points as well. Anyway, once again,
an interesting one though. I
agree with you though.
Yeah. Let's go to our next team, the New Zealand Warriors. A really interesting chat here. And I think there's an obvious guy, but once again, Adam Fanua-Blake, when he's not in that side, they look completely different. We've seen without Wade Egan, they look wildly different. Their timing's a little bit off. We've even seen in the last 2 weeks and a little bit last year without Charles Nickel-Clockstad. They look very different. I don't think you could make, as much as he's probably one of the best players in our game, I don't think you could make it Roger, because we saw what they did last year without Roger and obviously finished in the top 4 and were very successful. But I think the hallmark of last year and what they achieved came off the back of the resurgence of the great SJ. I think it just has to be Sean Johnson. He's got some other pieces in that team that are incredibly important. I will say this, the guy that I'd have as number 2 that I haven't mentioned yet is probably Tohu Harris.
Yeah.
He's getting older. He's 31, but his body's been through a lot. Tohu Harris. It'll be interesting to see how much longer he plays. Obviously, a guy, we always talk about guys that leave the Melbourne Storm and they tend to not go on and do great things. There's a couple of guys who have beaten that, your Gareth Widdups, your James Maloney's. Tohu Harris is one that has definitely jumped out of the box since leaving the Melbourne Storm. But it just has to be SJ, doesn't it? He just is the Warriors.
Yeah, looking at the whole Dally M conversation last year too, SJ's influence on the game, unquestionable. Yeah. You cannot deny that. I was going to say Tohu Harris is one that other people might, say his position's pretty crucial. He is that guy. And also RTS, but to your point, we saw what they can do without him. So I am obviously excited to see what RTS is going to bring to the table this entire season, but you just can't argue with it being SJ.
And it is a really interesting conversation, because I look at all the players we mentioned, like SJ. If SJ's out, they've got so many halves at the club that are really good. Not as good as SJ, don't get me wrong, but the drop off to the next guy is okay. Even chance to Torpiki or Roger is pretty good. Probably the one with the biggest drop is probably Wade Egan going down to Lussick. Now, he did all right the other day, but over a long period of time, just the timing that Wade Egan has with his halves and with his forward pack, it really is unmatched. And I think AFB is the other one. If you lose him as an alpha, which, you know what, we might be sitting here in 12 months' time, Kat, going, okay, we've now seen the Warriors with AFB at the Sharks. Maybe it was AFB. Yeah. There's every chance we get to next year and we actually see the Warriors without AFB and Sean Johnson, which will be very, very interesting. But I think SJ has to be the guy at the moment.
Yeah.
The St. George Illawarra Dragons obviously came out of the blocks flying this season. Impressed in round 1. Round 2, though, fell off a cliff, unfortunately. Keen to see how they bounce back in round 3. And, this is wild to talk about, but I think that their Jenga player, without a doubt, is the guy that said for the last 6 months he doesn't want to be there. I think it has to be Benny Hunt. He's now obviously a little bit happier. Well, he was in week 1. We'll see after week 2 and moving forward. But I just think everything that the Dragons do is directed through Ben Hunt. They've got other guys on the side, like your Jack DeBell and your Zach Lomaxes, your Blake Lorries that are important. But I don't know how you could go with anyone other than Benny Hunt. And you know what? If most teams Ben Hunt is in, he would be the Jenga player as well. Yeah. I even think in the Queensland Maroons side, the role that he plays, he's probably the most important 14 I've seen since Craig Wing. Yeah. Very impressive. I think it has to be Benny.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with the Ben Hunt call. I think, you're right, though. It's so interesting to think of the kind of vernacular around his role in that team and how clear he made it that he was very open to moving. But he's so committed to each game. He is one of the hardest working guys on the field every week. I think the other thing with Lomax, for example, if he was playing at fullback where he wants to be, he could be that Jenga piece. But I think that's not our problem. That's Flanagan's problem, and he needs to figure out the best place to put a player like that because he has, in my opinion, the potential to be a Jenga piece.
And people won't like me saying this, but if you get the absolute best out of Tyrell Sloan every single week with the talent he's got, he's in that conversation all of a sudden.
He look, and once again, people might disagree with me, but I was really impressed with his performance against the Dolphins because look at the score line. How many players at that point when you're 20-something points down, you stop trying? He was running that ball as much as he could. He's incredibly fast. I think he just needs to have the right players around him and he could do some really, really good things in this game.
Yeah, I'm sort of talking off the dome, but I vaguely remember, I think he actually had 10 tackle breaks in that game. Yeah. So, he had a red-hot crack. I don't think you can deny him of that. I know there's a sort of towards the back end of the game, Hamiso got him with a good one. He dropped the ball and whatnot, but it's 38 fucking nil. Your team's getting absolutely trounced.
I'm going to tell you, I'll be dropping balls by then too.
Yeah, I would have dropped them way earlier. I think, though, Benny Hunt is the obvious one there. Let's move to the West Tigers. And for me, there's a couple of young guys here who sort of jump out of the box. There's a couple of forwards that I really like, but Kat, I don't think you can possibly look past their captain, Appy. Came from the Penrith Panthers a couple of years ago, was wildly important to that side. I would have, probably 2 or 3 years ago, now you'd say Nath Cleary for Penrith, but 2 to 3 years ago, I honestly thought it was Appy. And I'm shocked how Appy has left and Mitch Kenny has just slipped in, and which is full credit to Mitch Kenny and doesn't take anything away from Appy. But I think he is definitely the Jenga player at the West Tigers, and every time they are going to be successful this year, I feel like Appy's going to have to play a very big role in it. I think if we're going to be successful for the New South Wales Blues this year, Appy's going to play a role in it too. They played the Raiders on the weekend and they got blown off the park, but the only thing that got them back into it was Appy's work around the ruck. And I think Appy, as far as all the hookers in the game, probably just after Harry Grant, I think his ruck recognition is the best. The way that he's able to, while the play the ball's getting itself sorted, the way he's able to look up and assess your A and B defenders, your markers, look at where eyes are looking, look at where they're communicating. I think there's very few hookers in our game that are as good at it as Appy is. And I'll tell you, the thing that Appy does better than probably any hooker I've ever seen is the way that he ducks and weaves out of tackles. He uses his size to his advantage. And a lot of that is ruck recognition, but then he's just dynamic around the play the ball there. And you saw, I think it was the 2022 grand final, the Penrith Panthers and the Eels, they started Appy off the bench. And when he came on, he just turned the game on its absolute head. Very Luke Priddis-esque from 2003. I think Appy has to be the guy for the West Tigers, Kat.
Yeah. 2 years ago, I would have said it was Adam Dewey.
which I think was fair.
Yeah. I think, and that's why for me, his story right now is really unfortunate because he's such a well-rounded player, can kind of do anything. But I think the role that he played on that side when he was at his best was undeniable. And so it's sad to see that it's taken so long for him to get back to that. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely would have said him with his absence, it has to be Appy.
It'll be interesting in 12 months' time when Jerome Luai arrives at the club. He'll be there. And I'll tell you what, it'll be interesting 12 months after that. I really hope, for West Tigers' sake, and this is with all due respect to Appy and to Jerome Luai, I really hope Jareem Buller is that guy. I hope that by that point, he's exceeded to such a level that Buller is the superstar in this team, the superstar that he should be. Obviously, he'd be pretty young at that age, so it might take a little bit longer. But my God, the untapped potential on that kid. Other guys like Galvin as well have got potential to be it. But I really hope in 2 years' time it's Buller. Let me ask you this, 12 months from now, we're in round 2, round 3. Do you still think it'll be Appy or do you think it'll be Jerome Luai on arrival?
It's a good question.
It's tough.
Because I think the expectation on Luai will be that he is that guy. Like there is undeniably the expectation that he arrives at Tigers and we should see a huge difference in their performance.
Yeah.
The reality though is, look at Crichton and Bulldogs. It doesn't necessarily, the leadership and the experience doesn't necessarily mean an immediate change for that side. So in 12 months' time, I'd like to think that Luai is delivering something and bringing something to the table for the Tigers, but it's very likely that we're not seeing a huge shift.
Yeah, I still think it'll be Appy.
Yeah.
I still think in the end of next year it'll be Appy. I just think he's that bloody good.
Yeah. I think it will be Alex Twal because he'll have scored his second try.
Alex Twal, how good. God, I hope he scores a few more this year. That would be unreal. All right, guys, that is our first episode of Jenga Players. We will be back next week for the second episode where we'll go through the rest of the teams. Let us know in the comments if you think there's anyone there that we missed or we've skipped on or you think that maybe we've slept on. Please let us know in the comments who you think they are or if you think we've maybe overvalued someone. We'd love to hear that as well. We'd love to hear differing opinions here. Obviously, guys, this episode is brought to you by Neds. Jump on the app and follow Rugby League Guru there. You can follow all my bets. You can follow all the About Even bets. We're obviously always gambling responsibly, guys. Prices subject to change. T's and C's available on the website. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website